who wants to be the website guy? This was 2002, 2001. Nobody really knew how to run a website, but you know, I'm making $18,000 a year. I said, sure, I'll take it on. We'll see where this goes. And it happened to just lead to an interest in how websites work, how to come up with a message that gets found and be able to track that. You know, those are kind of the essences of SEO. But what we're going to talk about today is SEO for content writing. What I do now at PM Digital is I am a strategist for SEO and content. So basically what I do is I help my clients create content strategies that helps their websites get found better. So one of my clients is Sperry, the shoe manufacturer. So today I was basically assessing keywords. I was designing different types of content that would appeal to that audience. Like, you know, we didn't have all the content we could for a wide width shoes for women page. So I had to, you know, discuss how to best create content that will get found relative to their competitors like Aerosols or Nike, and the list goes on. So before we get too deep in the weeds though, let's talk about what SEO is. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. And Moz.com, which is an outstanding search engine optimization website. You know, it's not only a wonderful resource for learning about what it is, there's a robust community that discusses trends and things like that. They're also, if you're a business, they provide services themselves. And Moz.com used to be SEOmoz.com, and they shortened it. They call SEO a marketing discipline focused on growing visibility in organic, which means not paid, search results. So I didn't have a chance to put together as fancy a set of slides as I'd like, so I'm going to use my hands. But you've got, you know, your web browser, just like this. So you put something into Google, and you basically have two different kinds of results. There's the organic results, and then almost like an L shape that are all ads. And nowadays they make it helpful because it'll say ad, ad, ad. So we're talking about the stuff that's organic, that nobody is paying to have made more visible relative to its competitors. We're talking about the practice of growing the visibility for a site without paying any money to Google, to other search engines to make that happen. Okay. Three main concepts in search engine optimization. As I kind of break it down when I'm explaining this to clients who haven't had any kind of SEO background before. There's the creative, the technical, and what I'd call the interactive. And the creative refers to articulating your content to anticipate the search activity of your target audience. What does that mean? That means trying to imagine who you're trying to reach, or to be even more precise, who will your website benefit the most from receiving a certain kind of traffic. So, you know, with Sperry, which is that shoe client that I've got, you know, that's people with wide feet. You know, who's the wide foot audience? What do they search for? So part of what you do is try to get in the head of that person or persons. You know, there are women who have wide feet, there are men who have wide feet, there are toddlers, there are, you know, very active people, there are people who have careers. Each one of those represents an audience. Each member of, or each segment of that audience searches for things unique to them, anticipating what they search for and weaving that into the content on your web page. That's what I mean by articulating your content. There's also the technical aspect. So basically this is understanding what it is search engines are doing when they're assessing the content on your website. You know, it's all automated. So Google is and I'm just going to use Google almost like Kleenex for tissues, Google for search engine, but there's Google, there's Yahoo, there's Bing, there's Ask, there's DuckDuckGo, there's Lycos, there's a million search engines. But all of them do the same thing. They all automatically canvas your whole web page, and they are looking for certain indicators to determine what the content on the page is all about. So by technical, I'm saying there are little ways you can define that content so that search engines understand better what it is, and by transference will make that content more visible to people looking for that content. Does that make sense? You know, you're pairing the intent of your audience with the content of your website. And you can do that with the content on the page itself. You can do that by manipulating those things the search engine is specifically looking for. And we're going to talk about what some of those are and how to manipulate them. And then finally, interactive. This one, it's more art than science. You're communicating the value and essence of your content so that you become trusted as a resource for that content, worthy of visibility for others. In other words, it's all about trust. You know, a good way to look at it would be to think about, you know, if you're a blogger that has a certain following, say you like to write about fashion, and you've been doing it for a few years, you know, you watch the award shows, you have opinions about what's on the red carpet, and you've amassed a following, you know, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people a month are reading what you have to say. If you mention a specific designer, if you mention like Vera Wang, and you link to them, Vera Wang is going to benefit from that because you have your own authority as a source. You've created content that audience of Vera Wang's cares about. So kind of by transference, by linking to Vera Wang, they're going to be more visible because you, by giving a little bit of your authority to them, are elevating their importance too. So their keywords are going to rise. And we'll get into jargon in a second. In fact, we're going to do it right now. So before we get into how to manipulate your content, we'll just get into a few terms that, you know, they're easy to glaze over and say, but I really want to examine them for a minute. So a keyword, which sounds, you know, pretty straightforward, it's not necessarily a singular thing. It's a word or phrase that defines the content of a given web page, an article, a post, a paragraph, a tweet, you know, anything that you're putting out there. There are one or two unifying concepts, phrases, or words that sum up what that is. You know, like a dictionary definition. You know, you write a page that's a review for the iPhone 6S. iPhone 6S review is a keyword that defines what the rest of that content is. A link, again, you know, something you see all the time, but very important for SEO purposes. A link or hyperlink, and I'm sorry, it's raining outside and raining in here. A line of code or text that can be clicked, resulting in landing on another page. So there are a few different kinds of links. You know, there's the internal link. So that's a link on a web page that takes you to another page within the same website. You're on McDonald's.com, you're reading stuff on the Big Mac page, and you see a link for the Filet-O-Fish page. You're still on McDonald's.com, you've just gone from one page to the other. That's an internal link. And then there's a backlink. That's the fashion blog who puts a link up to Vera Wang. Vera Wang just received a backlink from your blog. A backlink is an outbound link pointed at your website from a different website or domain. There's also an external link, which you know, is basically you, the blogger, sending that link out to Vera Wang. That's an external link from my fashion blog to Vera Wang's website. So internal, external, and backlinks. The backlinks are one of the key elements for really having a robust SEO presence. And the reason I say that is because backlinks are one of the key means by which you are creating and sharing authority. You're gonna hear me say that a lot, the authority, like the value of my content as determined by who's going to my website, who's clicking on the links from my website to another. The more authority that crisscrosses, the more visible your content is going to be. Another term that we're going to talk about is meta tags. Who's heard of a meta tag? Is that total Greek? It's easy. A meta tag, and there are lots of different kinds. A meta tag or tag is just an on-page element that a web page uses to define its content. This ties into that technical part of the SEO strategy. So, these aren't super complicated. A title of a page is a meta tag. This, SEO terminology, you could say that's the meta title for this slide. And the meta tags here, you could call this the keyword for this slide. So you've got your title, you've got your keywords, you've got your description. And there are a lot more. It really depends on what kind of web page it is. There are meta tags for price, for reviews, for product description, for SKU number if it's like a pair of shoes, which I've been working with a lot today. But I include these three. These are the ones that show up most often when you are drafting content, say on a blog, like on WordPress, or if you're working for like a retailer's website or a news website and you're modifying or otherwise generating content for a page. There's usually a field where you enter in the title of it. There's usually a little field where you're going to enter the keywords, sometimes called themselves just tags, and we'll talk about that. And the description, which is just a little abstract almost that shows people what that page is all about too. SERP, acronym, you hear that a lot, stands for Search Engine Results Page. So that's what you see after you Google something. You put in cat food on google.com. The thing that you see next is the SERP, the Search Engine Results Page, the SERP. I'm going to say the SERP a lot tonight, the SERP. And ranking. So a ranking, easy concept to grasp, not super easy to explain, but basically it's where your website appears relative to all the other websites in the SERP. So, I've got my fashion blog, or maybe cat food's a better example. You put in cat food, and there's Science Diet, there's IAMS, and there's, what's another cat food? Meow Mix. So Meow Mix is so bad for your cats. Don't ever buy that crap. That's why Meow Mix ranks number 3. So, that's all I mean by keyword ranks is, or ranking, is where your website shows up in the SERP. And that's not always an organic thing. Ranking applies to map results. You ever look for a restaurant in New York City? You'll see 10 different things on the map. Those are ranked too. And they have their own authority and their own, cross-talking going on. So ranking applies to a lot of things. It applies to news results too. If you go to news.google.com and you enter in, a breaking news event like the Russian incursion into Syria, which just happened a couple days ago, you're going to see a bunch of different websites, all with the same idea, but they're competing for your click and defining the content on their page a little different from one to the next in order to try to jostle their way to that top of the result, especially the first page. This morning at work, we were kind of going through SEO jokes. I was going to try to tell you one. There aren't any SEO jokes that are any good. This is the best one I know, and it has to do with rank and why it's so important. The only real reason anyone goes to page 2 of Google is when they're searching for an X. That's it. Otherwise, you just never go past page 1 of Google ever, those first dozen or so results. So take from that what you will. So let's talk about all these terms and these concepts and how those tie into content writing for SEO. Anything pretty much that you're going to generate, whether it's any of these items here, press releases, news articles, blogs, static content, like you're writing a product description or an FAQ, anything like this, they all have certain things in common. And those things can all be manipulated so that you're defining that content, not just for your audience, but for these automated bots, these search engines. So you've got two audiences that are kind of getting a look at your content. And you need to kind of cater to both in a way that's not too obvious to both. A good way to think about SEO is it's like being cool. The harder you try, the less successful you're going to be. You know, the key is to be kind of subtle and smart and not over the top. Well, you'll see what I mean as we kind of break this down a little bit. And we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A, I hope. We're only got a few more slides to go. So some common elements for all of these things that we were looking at before: press releases, news items, blog posts. They've all got headlines. This slide has a headline. The description, the keyword tags that we've defined, the body content, the internal and external links. Not everything is going to have every one of these. A blog post or a news article is going to have just about all of these. A tweet won't, or a Facebook post won't, but all of them have headlines. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. The headline you write is far and away the most important thing that's going to go in that piece of content, whatever it is. It's the first thing that search engines see. It's the first thing your readers see. And as such, it is a great opportunity for optimizing for search engines. So you're using that headline to define your content. We talked about what a keyword is. A keyword is a succinct summary of what's happening once you are clicked through and looking at some content. So this is a little, I have two cats. I'm all about cats today. So this is your meta title. You've seen this, like if you type cat food into Google, you'll see 10 links like this. So this first big blue one, that's the meta title. Every page on the internet's got one, whether they purposely edited, thought about, typed in what it is or not. Google's going to pick it for you if you don't. That's why it's important to have some strategy ahead of time as to what you want that to be. So we type in cat food and you'll see, boom, cat food brands, grain-free organic cat. This title is a little bit longer than I like because of these dots. We'll talk about that in the tips here, but when you're crafting a title, and again, the most important thing you're going to do, whether it's an editorial, a press release, it's going to define that content for the engines. It's going to help people determine whether or not this content has any value at a glance without looking at the rest of the stuff. So include that most relevant keyword, what really sums it up, and not the broadest thing. Like, you'll notice that the title here is cat food, not like cats. It's about cats, but cats is too broad. Cats is everything. If you do a search for cats, you could get cat toys and cat grooming and cat litter. So you want to be just specific enough that you're defining the content, not so specific that no one will find it. Cat food available in Pleasantville on Wednesday is not going to yield a whole lot. So there's a balance to strike. Define the content, don't over-define it, and don't under-define it by making it so broad. And keep it under 70 characters, give or take. Best practice with Google now, they actually measure it by pixels. I think it's 512 is what they give you. About 100 pixels is an inch. So call it 5 inches, about the width of your hand. And this one obviously runs long. I don't know, 3, 7, how many characters is that? Way too many. That's why they have the trailing ... So if you make your title too long, you're not going to get any benefit for whatever you wrote over here. If the search engine can't see it and the people who are searching it can't see it, it's not optimized. It's it's nothing. Or it's not nothing, but it's not going to help you. So keep it within this area, and it'll look more professional It'll look neater and cleaner. So that's how headlines and titles work. The description is a meta tag. You can also hear it referred to as the meta description, the meta title, the meta keywords. The meta description is this part right here. So, what are we looking at? About, 150 characters, about like a undersized text message. And you'll see that PetSmart did a really good job of staying within the constraints of the medium by doing that. Their title could use some work, but this description is right on point. Give your cat food designed for her. We can help you find grain-free, organic, and natural cat food brands. Those are all things that they sell. Those are all the things that are on this page. And it clearly has anticipated what I was searching for. So because it's relevant to me, these things kind of work in concert. All of these things at once, really. The title defines the content. This is your best opportunity to kind of pitch your audience in the search engine result and induce what's called a click-through. Your click-through rate, and you don't have to write this down necessarily, but it's just the ratio of how many times your link appears in the SERP versus how many times it appears and is clicked. So you improve your click-through rate by filling these things in as accurately as possible. And these are meta tags too, by the way. These are, things that you define on the page that might also be relevant and can bubble up in the search on its own. But, I just include that for reference for all the different kinds of tags there are. So that's your title, that's your URL, that's your description, and that's what's called your schema.org, which if you really want to know what that is, I'll give you my email. Keyword tags. So a short list of the words or phrases that define your content. You see this a lot in social media and on blogs where they put it right out in front of you. So, it makes it really easy. This is from the Planetary Society. They recently found water on Mars, which is really interesting because not only is it water, but it has rocket fuel in it. You have to look that up to kind of see what I'm talking about. But anyway, very interesting content. And what they do is every time they put a post on the Planetary Society, they include, these little terms: Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, hydrology, explaining science. Not the world's greatest keywords, but in tandem, they give you a gist of what's in store. So defining that content is really helpful with like news articles. If you're drafting news content on a website, if that's your job, you need to come up with a few keywords that help summarize what's happening there for a couple reasons. One is just to be found in a search engine results page for these terms, but there's also internal search results. Everyone's been to a website, like an e-commerce website or a news website, and they'll have a search bar, they'll type something in, and that content will appear or not. That is the exact same principle. So you're just tagging it. These are keyword tags. It's like a tag on your t-shirt. It tells you kind of what it is, how to care for it. There are a lot of different little pieces of information. With your keyword tags, like we said with the titles, don't be overly broad. Don't add a ton of these. You only see a handful of these here. 3 or 4. I mean, if you're writing a 400-word, 300-word editorial, how many keywords could there possibly be that are relevant? So just stick to 3 or 4. And most content management systems have a field for these tags. So if anyone's ever done any blogging, if anyone's ever worked with, say, WordPress or built their own websites or whatever, when you create a page, it's very common to have this field to enter the keyword tags. And you can tag social media in very much the same way. That's what a hashtag is. It's a way to define a tweet or an Instagram posting. You're tagging it with a keyword. That's what those hashtags are for. You can optimize those in a very similar way. But in order to get, the reason why people hashtag things is so that in that medium, on Twitter or on Instagram, or even in the search engine results or on Facebook too, when people search for those terms, they're going to look for posts, tweets, pictures that are hashtagged with those keywords. So that's all there is to it. That's all hashtagging is. And it's the exact same thing that you're doing with this body content. So speaking of body content, this is another area, and I do a lot of work in this. So you've got these technical aspects. You've thought about your title. You've thought about your meta description. You know, you've come up with all these little mini summaries so that people in search engine results can find it, and people on the people searching themselves can find it. But then there's the job of the actual text in the article that you're writing, and you can optimize this as well. So what you want to do is, when you've kind of grasped what your keywords are, and if you're outlining an article or a story or an editorial or whatever, you're going to know what those phrases are. You can weave them into your content to help people understand just what this content is. And this is an excerpt from an iPhone 6S review that I found kind of at random. And you see what this they did here, which is very clever, is they put iPhone 6S as the first word in the first paragraph, first sentence. It's front-loaded. You know, real estate is very important when it comes to body content. The lower something is on a page, the less likely you are to scroll all the way down to it. Google and search engines know that. They're going to give more value to content that you are dedicating the resources to have at the top of the page. That's why it costs more to put ads at the top of a web page than at the bottom, because you know, there are programs you can use that will show you, you know, it's very, very busy at the top. The further down you get down a page, the less likely people are to read that stuff. That's why there's page 1, page 2, page 3 on articles on the internet, even though, you know, web pages are infinite. It's because if you scroll down too long, you're going to be totally, you know, the navigation is long gone, any ads are long gone, and it becomes less helpful. So when you're thinking about how you want to optimize your body content, think about moving some of these key terms that if people search for them and find you, they're being served with content that, you know, helps them. So there are a lot of things about an iPhone 6S that people are talking about now. The new processor, this crazy 12 megapixel iSight camera. Any one of those things would lead a consumer to make a decision or not as to whether or not they want an iPhone 6S. A site dedicated to reviews wants people making those kind of searches. That's why they're front-loading their review here with that kind of content. So, you know, adopting the mindset of your audience, you know, what would they search for is just so important. You know, you really need to, you know, think about your audience as a person. You know, who is actually benefiting the most from this kind of content, and what would they be Googling? What would they be searching for? And you're just making that concept, that thought, more visible in these different ways. The last thing I think here, we're going to talk about links a little bit. So you've got your titles, you've got your tags, you've got your body content, but you know, let's start involving the rest of the world here. Internal links do a couple of things. They help tie together the content. They lead readers to additional information on your website. The more content you have on your website, generally speaking, the more valuable it is. And chances are, if somebody lands on your page for the iPhone 6S review, they're going to be interested in a couple of these other things. You know, a recent water test about how, you know, Apple may have made their phone waterproof or not. You know, a previous review, you know, if you want to compare and contrast. So this does a couple of things. It keeps people interested and keeps people navigating around your website. You know, the longer people spend on your website, ultimately the better it is for your SEO also. And that's true of a lot of different kinds of content. That's true of YouTube videos, for example. If you watch a YouTube video all the way to the end, it's way better for whoever posted that than if you just watch 15 seconds of it. If you click through some internal links, you're staying on a website longer. That site is more authoritative because it is a wellspring of information, and as such, it probably deserves to be more visible. So let's talk about how these work a little bit. You'll notice that the way they've set their links up, this text in blue, those are the links, by the way, in case you didn't know. This text has a name. It's called anchor text. Anchor text is oftentimes, and you've seen it a million times, click here, or learn more, or buy now. I hate that kind of anchor text. It doesn't tell you very much at all about where you're going. And knowing where you're going and having seen it, means that that content is valuable. That's why the link is my review of the iPhone 6 Plus last year. Tells you what it is, what it's about, when it came to be. All of these little pieces of information that you're given in the anchor text to help induce a click versus click here to see my review, blah, 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 blah. All that's going to get noticed by the search engine algorithm is you have something that says click here. I mean, maybe that is a good thing, maybe it isn't. But why make it more complicated for Google? Remember, search engines are dumb. They only know what you tell them. If you tell them explicitly what's happening, you have a much better chance of improving your overall result. A recent water test. Again, it just gives you a little bit more about where you're headed. Almost like a mini title. You could think of it that way. So when you're adding links in your content, I can't stress enough how important it is to just take a second, think about what that destination or landing page is what we call it, how that landing page relates to the content you started with, and what you should put as that anchor text to induce a click, to keep that reader sticking around. And then external links. And this is where SEO becomes less of a scientific exercise and more of a subjective one. External links provide additional information and it promotes sharing. So in the same review, the author decided to add a bunch of links about this third-party app, 3D touch support. So all of these different websites he's linking out to, the things, the Scanner Pro, Instagram, and so on. And the reason why you want to do that, a couple of reasons. One, it increases your credibility to a certain extent to not just link to your own content. You're doing society a favor by exposing people to information that is related and valuable beyond just your own content. And what's really interesting about that is you can contact who you're linking out to. Say it's someone, a little bit less high profile than Instagram or Twitter or Evernote. Say you're writing for, I don't know, what's the name of the local newspaper here? Journal News. The Journal News. Okay, so say you were writing about like a review of a dry cleaners that happens to have a website, and you do an external link to that website. You could reach out to them and say, hey, Bob's Dry Cleaners, we're talking about you in this article. Would you be interested in posting our article on your website and include a link back to ours? That sort of quid pro quo. You're building up the authority of Bob's Dry Cleaners, and by Bob and the gang posting a link to your website in kind, you're both being more of an authority. You're creating a mutual authority kind of situation, which is very positive. So linking externally is great. The more backlinks you can catch, the better it's ultimately going to be for your SEO. I spend half my time doing exactly that, which is just kind of identifying that fashion blogger or someone else in the realm of content production related to my product and say, hey, you're writing about this big yacht race. You want to talk about the shoes that they were wearing, and how about including a link to my client while you're at it? Sometimes you pay money to do that. Sometimes people just do it because they get their own benefit from being linked to from a bigger website. There are a lot of reasons why people will trade these links back and forth, but establishing that dialogue can be very valuable for your SEO. I included this bullet point twice because I just want to really hammer it home. When you're linking within your content, that anchor text should really be something that defines the content of that landing page. And finally, here's a little trick, and this one, you may want to write this down for later. There are a lot of ways to code a link. When I write code your external links as target equals quote underscore blank quote, so that a blah, 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 blah. This little piece of code, basically what it does is, and you've seen this, where you click a link and it pops open a new tab or a new page, and you don't navigate straight away from where you were. Happens a lot on news sites, and it's just a very common practice. The reason why I suggest you do this is if you have an external link that somebody clicks and it's coded in this way so that it opens a new tab or opens a new window versus just moving past your site to theirs, people will leave that tab with your web page on it active. It'll stay there. So that adds time on the clock of how long an active user was on your website. So, it's just a little trick that all we SEOs do, among many others. But that's basically it. I'm going to open it up to questions if you have any, but that is in large part what SEO is all about. Defining your audience. Are they 25 to 54-year-old moms who need to buy shoes for their toddlers? What do they search for on the internet? How do I conceptualize what that is, write it out, and apply it to my website so that that person gets on this website and hopefully buys what I'm selling, or reads what I'm writing, or shares what I'm writing? All of those things contribute to the overall success of your SEO strategy. So that's what I do all day long. And if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to entertain it. And I know a lot about social media optimization and web writing in general, those kinds of things. So if you have any questions in that field, yeah, go ahead. What's your name?
Jordan.
Hi, Jordine.
How you doing?
Good.
When you said as far as like the external links and how it keeps your web page open so you can show, I guess, the timeline or how much time spent on your website. What is besides the fact that they're looking at my content, what is the value of it, I guess? Like, what does it do for you? Like, I understand I've been looking at your page for 20 minutes rather than 10 minutes. That extra 10 minutes, what does it do for their website?
What it does is, and I'm not saying it's fair, but think of it this way: like if you're watching TV and you're one of those households that is timing how long you watch TV in order to determine what the rating is. Let's say you flip on the Super Bowl, and you go out to the backyard for a half an hour to work the grill, but the TV is still on. The household still gets credit for the amount of time spent watching. So your website will work the same way. So we call it a session when a user goes to a website. So that session, the length of that session connotes how much value a user got from the website because they spent so much time looking at it. It's an inexact thing. Remember, this is an automated process. So it's just an automated thing that a search engine does to try to tease out whether someone found your website valuable or not. So if they, meaning the search engines, infer that a user who spent a long time on that tab found it valuable, you benefit whether they're looking at it or not. Whether you've got 8 tabs going and the one you're looking at is what you just clicked through to.
I guess I'm not understanding what the benefit is. You said you benefit from it, so is there you get an award for it? Is there some kind of monetary value?
Sure. The benefit is this. If and there are a lot of factors, a lot of ranking factors. It's not just the time spent on the site, but in this case, this particular ranking factor, if users spend more time on your website and that website gains more authority as a result, then the terms that you're targeting, those keywords that you're targeting, are going to be made more visible in the search engine results page versus competitors where people spend less time. So your keyword rankings improve. So you go from Meow Mix at number 3 to number 1 because they spent more time on Meow Mix than they did on Science Diet. So the benefit comes in improved ranks for the keywords that you're emphasizing and telling Google to look for that define your content. The higher your ranking is in the search engine results page, the more likely you are to click through. Usually it's positions 1, 2, and 3 get like 80% of all the organic traffic as a result of a search. So the higher your ranking is, the more traffic your website's going to get, and then whatever benefit your website gains from the traffic, whether it's exposure to advertisements or selling a product or reading the content itself, all of those things, all of those benefits derive from that increase in your rankings as a result of more time spent on the page or a well-defined title or an external link that's returned in kind. Does that make sense?
So everything is about moving up that ranking, making
Right.
yourself more visible to people who are trying to find whatever it is that you're doing.
The more time people spend on your content, the more likely in Google's eyes that website has more value. So that's, and that's manifest in showing up higher on Google when people search for stuff.
How are you doing on time? What is the time?
It is 10 to 8.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Have some people who need to be out by 8. Are there other questions?
How do you know if you're, I know you mentioned the ranking,
Uh-huh.
but how do you know if your strategy on a whole is successful? Because sometimes you hire companies. I'm with a travel company,
Mm-hmm.
and how can you tell if it's because of what that company is doing as opposed to an ad that's online?
Mm-hmm. That's a terrific question. There are lots and lots of ways to track your progress.
Okay.
Let me throw out a term for you. Google Analytics, which is a free piece of software that Google provides that you can install on your website, usually very simply. And what Google Analytics provides, and there are other analytics, there's Yahoo Analytics, there's Bing Analytics, but they will, in a very granular way, show you that somebody searched for this term and clicked on your website as a result, or didn't, spent a minute on your website or longer. When they got to your page, they clicked through to say they get to the cat food page, but they decided they wanted dog food, but they didn't leave the web page, so they go from cat food to dog food to buying something. Google Analytics can trace that path. So that's one way you can tell, is by installing Google Analytics and examining what's called the organic campaign section. When you're mounting an SEO strategy, we call them campaigns. There are paid campaigns too, which is a wholly different animal. Now, if what we're talking about is tracking keyword rankings, which is a lot of fun, especially if it's going well in your campaign, there's a plugin for Firefox that I really, really like, and it's called Rank Checker. So that's a hard one to remember. I think SEObook.com provides it, and it's a plugin on Firefox that lets you put in any website you can think of. McDonald's.com, I don't know why I'm stuck on that, probably haven't had dinner yet. Or PetSmart.com, any website, and you can put in however many keywords you want, and that tool will tell you right away how that website ranks for that keyword. So you can find out at a glance if something that you just added to your website, like a new travel promotion to the Bahamas, if you created a page on your website with the meta title, Bahamas Special $199, which would be a great special, you can put that term that you've just come up with as your new title for your new page on your website in a tracker like that, and just over time check it every day and see whether or not your keyword moves up or down in the search engine results page rankings. So that's one way to track, but there are lots and lots of ways to track your progress. So I would start with Google Analytics, and that rank checker plugin is terrific too.
On Firefox?
Yeah, it only works on Firefox. I haven't found a good one for Chrome or IE or anything yet. Not that I would use it. Sure. Anything else?